Right, so I'm just about to set out on my bike again, so welcome to the next episode of Bike and Psych. Right, so one of the questions that I think we all have often is why do people do what they do? So this is going to date this video, but I've just been to the shop and there's no toilet roll on the shelves. Why are people doing that? Why did that person overtake me on that bend? Why did that person steal that thing from work? And so on. So we often find ourselves kind of a bit baffled by the behaviour of people. So no surprise, psychologists are very interested in that question: why do people do what they do? And so one of the answers to that has come through cognitive psychology. I'll talk a bit later about the criticisms of it, but one of the most popular models is the theory of planned behaviour by Psych. I may well have pronounced that wrong, but Psych. Anyway, so cognitive psychology tries to essentially identify the cognitive processes that happen in the brain before we do something. And the theory of planned behaviour is just that. It's a theory that helps us to understand just why people make the decisions that they do. This is kind of useful because if we know that, we might be able to influence them, hopefully for good. So the theory of planned behaviour actually starts with the behaviour itself, and you could observe it. So it could be, I do a lot of work in food factories, so clearly washing hands is important in those factories. Obviously it's really important anyway, but washing hands therefore could be described as a behaviour. So before the person washed their hands, they must have had an intention to wash their hands, or at least that's the way the theory goes. So before every behaviour there is an intention. And then what's really interesting about this theory is that there are three elements, if you like, that are weighed up by the individual, or I don't know, you could think of it as an intentional soup. So there's three elements that go into this soup. One of them is attitude towards the behaviour. So basically this means what you think about the behaviour. Do you agree with it? More deeply, I suppose, do you see it as in your best interest, or the people that you love? Or is it just the right thing to do? So morals plays a part here. So there is self-interest, interest in others, if you think that's important. It's tied to your values and beliefs about what's right and wrong, what's good and bad, and what's in your interests, or wider interests, if that is one of your values. The next one to talk about are the normative beliefs. And these are called subjective norms. So there's some things that we could say, well, these things are objectively right to do, but a lot of what we do are subjective. So they are cultural, they're determined by our social surroundings, and the way we notice what our culture thinks about it, or what our social group thinks about it, is we literally watch what they do. So that's essentially peer pressure, if you like. It's the way that we perceive the culture or the social group around us, what they seem to be doing, really. So it's what is everybody else doing? And the other element is our behavioural beliefs, or beliefs about the control we have. So control beliefs, if you like, how much we think we can actually do that thing that we might have an intention to do. So I'm going to put that into simpler words now. So the first one I mentioned was really, is it good? Is it right? Is it in my best interest to do this thing? Is it in the interest of people that I care about? So does it fit with my values, and is it in my interest to do it? Second one is, what's everybody else doing? And the third one is, can I do it? So if you think about those three things, if you can answer, yeah, it's in my best interest, seems to be what everybody else is doing, so it's the norm, and yep, I can do it, then you're likely to do it, or at least have an intention to do it. Now, just having an intention doesn't necessarily mean you're going to do it, and the model recognises that. So there is a kind of dotted line from the can I do it element to the actual doing it, and that's around whether you actually can do it, if that makes sense. So sometimes you might have the intention to do something, but something stops you. So I'm going to use the example of washing hands, because I work in the food industry quite a lot, and this is obviously really important when you're handling food. If you've ever been to a food factory, you'll notice that if you go for a tour, before you even get in the factory, you have to wash your hands. There's a room, normally the changing rooms, where you get togged up in your PPE. There's also a hand washing facility there, and you are expected to wash your hands. There's a long tray there, there's soap dispensers, there's water. You wash your hands, you dry them. You normally operate the tap without your hands, so it's all laid on for you, you do that. And then you go into the factory, and as soon as you go into the factory, there's another washing facility, kind of identical. Wash your hands, use soap. You often also have a sanitizer as well, and you have to make sure you dry your hands properly, and only then can you go into the food factory. So that's the way it's done. So if you think about how you get people to wash their hands, even though they might not do so at home, what you do is you say, right, let's look at this first one then. How can I convince people that this is the right thing to do? And so you might have training courses about germs, and educate people about the dangers of certain types of bacteria and the effect they have on people. Yeah, so you might do a training course that really helps the person to understand germ theory, and you might even show them some microscopic pictures of germs and just what those germs can do to people, especially if you might have a partner who's pregnant, you might be pregnant, you might have an elderly relative at home, you might be elderly. So it's really just saying, well, this is important, here's the data, here's the facts, here's why you should care about this. So that's really appealing to that first one, attitude. We're trying to influence people's attitude through self-preservation, if you like, but also thinking about other people. Second one there, you have to make sure that everybody sees it as important. So if you should never let somebody into a factory without washing their hands, no matter how busy they might be, because as soon as you let that one go, what are you doing? You're setting a new norm. You're saying that actually we don't always do that around here, so that can obviously set you back. And really important here are managers and other VIPs, I suppose, and their behaviour. Now, if you're visiting a site, you may have absolutely no intention of touching anything. You probably shouldn't. Even so, you should be washing your hands, and that's because it's that social norm. You're helping to keep that social norm in play. And the third one is about whether people believe they can do it. Their beliefs about the control that they have over doing it. Well, hand washing is a relatively easy thing, although you can get it wrong. So you could argue that to do it properly, you need some training, or at least some instruction maybe, and that is normally given. Oh, did you see that? It's a hawk. But you might also think about, it's not just about whether they can do it in theory, but do I have all the facilities that they need? So, is the water always on? Is it at a sufficient pressure? Is there always soap in the dispensers? Are there enough dispensers and enough room for everybody to do it as they're coming on shift? You imagine if there's 50 people coming in at the same time, people might start to get worried that they're not going to be able to wash their hands in time to get on the line in time, and they might be punished for that. So that's kind of important, to make sure that they believe they can actually do it. and they can. So that's the other thing that I mentioned about making it actually possible. So that's a really simple example, and of course this is going to date this video a bit, but at the moment there's a lot of talk about hand washing and other bits of behaviour that authorities are trying to get people to follow, and that's kind of important to get people to do those things. So thinking about those three things I think are quite useful. Alright, now I like to talk about the criticisms of these theories as well. So here goes. So cognitive theories come under a bit of hammer, this one particularly, in that they tend to be very rational. So, you know, the question is, do we really think rationally like that? You know, do we weigh up the pros and cons? He's waiting for me, thank you. Thanks very much. So do we weigh up all the pros and cons? Or do you just kind of make gut decisions? And so there's a good argument to say that actually a lot of what we do are not rational decisions, they're just kind of instinctive or just made unconsciously. And that's of course where this model falls down a little bit. You could argue that there's some unconscious stuff going on there, but it doesn't really map it. And so that's one of the criticisms of it. So the way I like to sort of talk about that is to say, well, that's true. That's why it's called the theory of planned behaviour. So if we're thinking about unplanned behaviour, or behaviour that is instinctive or unconscious, such as unconscious biases, then really that model doesn't really take us very far. But that doesn't mean we should abandon it altogether, because it does tell us something. Because it does tell us something about our thinking processes, and it's somewhere to start. Okay, so that's the theory of planned behaviour. I hope you found that interesting. I don't know if you can see that, but that is a kite. They are fantastic. They've just become so numerous now in the area. It's fantastic to see. Okay, so thank you very much for listening. All about the theory of planned behaviour. Next time, I've not decided what I'm going to talk about, but I'm definitely going to talk about sometime these unconscious processes like biases. There's a whole load of them. It's kind of an interesting area, so I'll talk about that, if not on the next one, in one of my videos. So please subscribe. And this is kind of a new series for me, so I'm really hoping people find it interesting. And also it's kind of nice because I'm on the bike, and it means I can get out on my bike and do some sort of podcasting work as well. So hopefully you find it interesting. Please subscribe and please like if you like it. Oh, and the other thing I wanted to say is, if there's anything that I say here that you question or you disagree with, you might be a psychology professor or tutor. Some of my tutors might watch this and they might say, no Steve, you got that wrong. Well, if that's the case, let me know. We can start a bit of a discussion about that, and I'm happy to reply and eat the proverbial if I get anything wrong. Thank you.